You're listening to Go with Jamarlin Martin. We have a go hard or go home approach as we talk to the leading tech leaders, politicians, and influencers. Let's go. Today we have Eugene Craig, the former vice chairman of the Maryland Republican Party and entrepreneur. How's it going, Eugene?
It's been good, man. Glad to be here at the Go team. Ready to have some fun today.
Let's talk about your story. You obviously are a leader in the Republican Party here in Maryland and nationally, up-and-coming star. But you don't come across as kind of like your Clarence Thomas style.
I ain't got time for that.
Republican Party.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so let's talk about how did you get here and your story, your background.
So, I like to describe myself as, 100% black and 100% Republican. My politics may lean right, but my culture is still, 100% nigga, to be honest about it. I'm 100% black. It is what it is. I'm a hip-hop kid. I grew up, Jay-Z, Nas, Ether, Takeover Beef. By the same token, I grew up, understanding that, opportunity lifts people up. People should be free to make decisions for themselves. People should be free to build the communities that they believe they want to live in. And so that's where I've defined myself where my cross section comes in. I've always kind of leaned to the right.
Is that going back to high school?
I was going back to high school. I did I went to a small private school, and in order to graduate, you have to essentially write a 20-page thesis on a particular topic. And my topic was essentially a right versus left, conservatism versus liberalism. And, I've leaned right. And then college, that kind of further developed, a little bit more nuanced and whatnot. I've discovered libertarianism at a time. I was a campus coordinator for Students for Liberty, part of that whole Ron Paul revolution in 2012. And then, watch the very, very slow yet fast decimation of the Republican Party over the last 5 or 6 years since then. But in that same time span, got actively involved in 2012, also with, Dan Bongino's U.S. Senate campaign. There was a time when Dan actually was not off the rail, and actually he was actually a sensible guy. He gave him a start. Started out as an intern. 2 weeks later was a youth coordinator. A week later was a statewide youth coordinator. And then 2 months after that, throughout the rest of the campaign, was Dan's body guy. And then I learned a lot. Dude's a former Secret Service agent, so I learned how to read people, how to read situations in a totally different way. Got to see, political theatrics up close and personal from a couple different angles. From there, I just stayed active. 2014, got elected vice chair of the Maryland Republican Party, and then all hell broke loose.
What about your parents and kind of, did you grow up like a Cosby kid, kind of middle class, or what?
I grew up middle class. My parents, professionals. My mom's a microbiologist. My dad was a doctor. Taught me, really, great values. Hard work pays off. Delayed gratification. Oh, they're hardcore Philly Dems.
Okay.
Although,
so
probably
you went against the green.
Yeah, I went against the grain.
Yeah.
I'm a rebel, But, the good thing, my dad's probably more so moderate these days, though. He's a Hogan fan. They both are Hogan fans. And so, it is what it is. Everybody's a Hogan fan these days.
You launched a political action committee for Kanye for president, right?
Yeah.
And then so Kanye was recently in the news, of course, with pro-MAGA statements.
Mm-hmm.
He's very open that he's banging for MAGA. That's what he's representing.
He's trolling for MAGA.
How do you feel about that? You're the one who set up a political action committee for him.
So that was a fun time. That was actually a really fun time. So, during that time span, we had another PAC. I forget the name of it. I've had so many PACs. It was essentially actually a young minority conservatives fund. Where our goal was it's a group of us young black Hispanic conservatives. We said, look, we want to be able to support and candidates that essentially want to help minority communities. And so what I did was during the whole I believe 2015 MTV Awards, Kanye had his rant and his whole 2020 rant. So we had a PAC and everything, and we want to support candidates that supported issues that affected minority communities. And so during the whole 2015 MTV Movie Awards, when Kanye had his epic rant that he's running for president, and I hit the group. I'm like, hey guys, I think we might be living in a moment here. And I just one thing when I work with a team, at least especially when I work close with people, I try to make sure before I do anything crazy, they're okay with whatever potential blowback that may come, and they were fine with it. So around midnight that night, we figured we're doing it under the cloak of darkness and nobody's paying attention. Of course, we ignore RSS feeds, right? We filed the paperwork. By 8 a.m. that morning, I had 37 press requests for interviews, quotes, and all the good jive. I gave my first quote to Dave Weigel who was at the Washington Post. It's only because I knew him from his Bloomberg days. During that time span, I was also working with Rand Paul's presidential campaign. Essentially one of the Maryland co-chairs and one of the African American and young professional co-chairs. And we had fun with it. After the Weigel piece hit, AP picked it up, and everybody else covered.
Was it about fun, or were you really thinking about, hey, Kanye could really be in the race and like?
Well, I think I would say this. If I'm looking at Kanye circa 2003 to probably through Watch the Throne, Dark Twisted Fantasy, through Yeezus, Kanye is actually woke dude that probably falls within the mainstream of black political thought and mainstream political thought. We're talking pre-MAGA Kanye here. Now my also thought process is this: any party that takes Donald Trump seriously as a candidate, sure as hell could take Kanye West seriously as a candidate. And so there was some level of seriousness there, but there was also some level of, hey, let's capture this moment. Let's capture it before somebody else does. And that's what we did. There were a couple folk that bought websites and this, that, and the third. But, our one leg up was that we filed official paperwork, baby. Like we filed actual, Federal Election Committee paperwork on it and whatnot. And from there, we had fun with it.
What do you say to the folks in the community who say, look, we need to stop getting our political guidance, cultural guidance from rappers, from singers, from dancers, from comedians, where we're overweight leaning on entertainers and celebrities and artists for serious issues in the community, meaning that we overvalue them and we need to get away from that. So, hey, why would we assign so much currency to Kanye to really, have an impact on some of the problems in the community?
Because the thing is, I will say this. It's a conflict. It's a conflict I even dealt with. Part of it, in particular to, there's a micro issue and a macro issue. The micro issue in particular to Kanye is in a rollout right now for his album and whatever else he's trying to sell Yeezy-wise. He's been in a constant rollout for about a year now. And that's what I kind of attribute a lot of this to. I don't, defend his Trump antics. I don't defend his MAGA antics. I don't agree with them.
You're not banging for MAGA yourself.
No, I was one of the biggest never Trumpers and current still never Trumpers.
Would you come out and say, to your point, like, fuck MAGA?
Fuck MAGA. I don't know if cuss on it, but it's fuck Trump every day of the week. Literally, twice on Sundays. I literally supported 3 other candidates to try to stop this guy.
If you're a Republican, I imagine that you're in a very lonely position as a black man. But when you come out and say "fuck MAGA," how do they respond to that?
It's a juxtapose. There are some Republicans that actually understand. It's like, hey, look, Trump, thinks Mexicans are rapists and murderers. He still thinks, Barack Obama was born in Kenya. He still has not apologized for Central Park 5. So, to some degree, I get a pass. There's some white folk that actually, despise it. And it's a mix. It's the same token I deal with black folk that, some folks see past, oh, damn, Gene, you're cool as shit. You're cool for a Republican, The others are just don't understand it. And so, it's an issue of, when you get down to the individuality of the person, the red or blue hat really kind of doesn't matter. For folk that say, hey, we probably shouldn't lean on our entertainers or our artists for political guidance, I somewhat disagree. I think those folk don't necessarily know their history. You don't have an overwhelming success of the civil rights movement without the Black Arts Movement. You don't have, King's overwhelming success without folk like Harry Belafonte and Aretha Franklin helping fund these movements. And the bigger thing is that what artists and rappers and hip hop is able to do with their reach is literally elevate an issue overnight. When you're able to get to the folk that drive the culture, culture will always, be 10 steps ahead of politics because politics moves slow.
Yeah, to me, that's a separate issue, though, where I get that, hey, we want the X-Clans, the Public Enemies. We want Jay-Z talking about all this conscious stuff. That's good. But when it comes to policy and how do we solve these complex problems, do we want to even give Kanye 1 minute because he says he doesn't read books?
Yeah, no, which I think is absolutely crazy. But I think it falls on the political side and the individual side to educate. Everybody's not going to be a Pusha T that's been working in criminal justice reform for the last 20 years. You're going to have folk that have reached like a Kanye. Just imagine, you had, somebody actually was able to sit Kanye down and say, listen, these are your talking points. This is the crux of the issue. Then he's able to go out and throw that on his megaphone. You could probably see movement a lot of things overnight if you properly inject the culture into it.
Is Kanye Uncle Tom?
No, I don't believe in using the term. I wouldn't qualify him as such. Don't get me wrong. I know some folk that probably fit the description perfectly. But that's not it's not a term that necessarily used. Whatnot.
What does the black community get wrong about brothers in the Republican Party? What would you say?
I don't put it on the black community. It's the Republican Party's job to do outreach and engagement. It's black Republicans' job to do outreach and engagement. I don't think the community gets anything wrong. I can't get upset with you or fault you if you never come speak to me, if you've never come engage me, and my only perception of you is what I see. And if all I see is, hey, Ron DeSantis is telling Gilman he's going to monkey it up, or, Donald Trump saying that Central Park 5 is still guilty, 20, 30 years later, if he's saying Barack Obama's born in Kenya, if that's all I see, if I see Steve King saying, hey, these guys have, cast aside cantaloupes to carry marijuana, if that's all I see, I can't fault you. I can't fault the community. I put it on the RNC. I put it on state parties. I put it on local parties.
So from your perspective, as a Republican,
as a vice chair of a state party with a huge black population,
you're saying black folks are right in banging against the Republican
absolutely.
Party.
It's not my job. It's not my job. It's as a voter, it's the parties, the candidates, the operations' job to come and engage me. It's not my job to come out to you and say, hey, take my vote. Just take it. No, it's your job to come and earn it. And Michael Steele will tell you the same thing. K. Coles James will tell you the same thing. All the black Republican elders will tell you the same thing.
Trump obviously has a cloud of treason, collusion, cheating on his wife, sexual assault, corruption, money laundering. So there's a big cloud over Trump, as you know. What do the Republicans tell you in terms of, hey, we still have to support him, even though that these clouds are all over him, in terms of like, hey, we're supposed to be about moral values.
The rules of this game has changed. You are in a fight for power, an absolute power. Historically, the U.S. Senate has been the water on the fire to cool things down, to slow things down a bit. Without a 60-vote filibuster, absolutely, it's a simple majority. We get whatever we want, as whoever has a majority, and that's what you're seeing now. Folk want judges. They want to put on life. Develop a whole generation of judges on the federal benches and appellate benches. That's what you're getting. You want to fast track policy, or probably or another would have taken decades. Policy's written in decades. It took. We got Obamacare 20 years later after Hillary pushed essentially was Medicare for all, which is a Heritage Foundation idea that Newt Gingrich pushed shortly before that. The irony of it. And so the thing is that. What folk understand is Trump's ignorance, because the guy is very ignorant. He does not know much when it comes to policy. They give him, talking points, and he does not divert from them. And when he does divert, we see what we get, wildest hour-long press conferences in the world. The thing is this. What congressional Republicans have understood is that they have absolute power right now. They have a president that literally will sign anything they put in front of him. It's the truth. He didn't know it was in a tax bill. he's not reading, 1,000-page bill. He doesn't know what's in this, monstrosity of a, $3.8 trillion budget that would just pass. He doesn't know, how adding $1 trillion to debt is going to come and devalue the American dollar and hurt, American families that he, cares to claim to care about. And so, that's what they understand. And so it becomes, hey, we have this window to get whatever we want. Let's get whatever we want and what we can get. And so what do you see? You see an expansion of Patriot Act powers,
So it's just a matter of, hey, we know he's most likely corrupt. He could be an asset of the foreign Russian government. But we're getting all this stuff.
We're getting all this stuff, and we know that he won't be impeached as long as we control one house of Congress.
And so essentially, we're okay with dabbling into treason, corruption, money laundering, as long as we get this stuff.
We're okay in dabbling in absolute power. Lindsey Graham laid it out for you the other day during the Kavanaugh hearings very clearly. Part of, while he's pointing the finger at the Democrats about absolute power, folk forget that they kept Merrick Garland's seat open for 10 months. Yeah. Just for the opportunity for Trump to come in to make the appointment, a month after the election.
Yeah, so if the Republicans are going to ignore a lot of the unpatriotic stuff that Trump, I believe, has dabbled in or has participated in, why hasn't do you think the public linked the Republicans being okay with Trump being soft on Russia, working with Russia, most likely doing shady and corrupt things with Russia, but then coming back on the other side and saying that these black athletes are unpatriotic, but I can work with foreign intelligence agencies to accomplish something, but that's patriotic because I'm powerful and white and I get to define what is patriotic and what is not.
Well, I think it's part of it is the Russia collusion case is a very complex issue. The average member of the public couldn't tell you not one of the names of the Russian actors. They probably couldn't tell you who Roger.
No one knows the name of Kislyak.
Nobody. They probably could not pronounce.
They don't
Kislyak.
know they don't know. Most likely, he was the handler.
But I'll tell you, take it a step further. They could probably tell you who Roger Stone is. And so what you have is one issue is really simple, one issue is really complicated. If I come and I tell you, hey, I'm patriotic, that's something that I understand and I feel. But also, the polling's also pretty split on that. I do think there's a huge pushback from the public. We're seeing it. We saw it with Doug Jones in Alabama, and part of that was Roy Moore being so bad. But one more time, even with horrible candidates, when you have a state like Alabama where your typical Republicans run up the board 20 points. It's a little bit more than Roy Moore being a child molester here. But you're seeing it, and I think you're going to see it come, November 6th. You're going to see a sweep across this country that, very well may turn both houses of Congress over to the Democrats in a major way.
Have you ever crossed over to vote for a Democratic candidate?
I haven't. There have been times where I've written in candidates. I just haven't had a, Democrat that I feel comfortable voting for. And part of that is, I believe people should be able to make their own choices for their lives. I believe people should be able to keep their money. I believe, you know how to spend your money much better than any government or politician does, and it goes for Republicans or Democrats. I am openly publicly supporting Beto O'Rourke right now. I think Ted Cruz is pure hot fucking trash. His stance on Botham Jean, his stance on, other police shootings. Listen, I am.
He reminds me of Bobby Kennedy a little bit.
Oh yeah. He's, it's going to get interesting down there. My thing is this, I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm socially libertarian. All that shit goes the fuck out the window the second you tell me that you don't care if, I die the next day, by a bullet from a actor of the state, an actor of the government. That goes out the window. Yeah. Me surviving as a black man supersedes everything. And so, from that perspective, I'm supporting, Beto O'Rourke, warming up a little bit to Gillum, an economic side, and I just can't get with it, to be honest with you. But
a lot of folks in our community, they say Barack Obama, he's recently said, just vote. You guys are making it too complicated. Just vote. You have people who will say, our people died for the right to vote. Just vote. You're doing the community a disservice. You're setting us back when you do not vote. But my point of view is that the Democratic Party has abused the black support promiscuously for so long that if we're supporting them at 90%, actually not voting is a weapon for this corporate machine that's been abusing you. So essentially, the not voting strategically in an organized way, if people are just going to say, hey, you niggas going to be voting anyway at 90%, so I don't got to do much. Hey, maybe the community needs to consider, we need something hanging over where we may not show up if you don't.
Well, I'll give you a better scenario. What if there was actually an alternative for you to vote for? This is where Republicans fuck up. All right, I'll give you an example. Baltimore City's a complete shit show right now.
Man, I had this on my list.
You know,
You brought up Baltimore. I was driving through the hood the other day.
A complete shit show. The roads are fucked up. The police department's fucked up. There are no fucking jobs. I'm gonna say fuck a lot here. There are no fucking jobs. Businesses are fucking struggling. And Catherine Pugh and the city council has time to fucking deal with styrofoam fucking containers. It was enough for me to call in a 92Q and say, really, this is what we're fucking dealing with. Styrofoam containers. When you have an out-of-control rat problem. When you have, potholes that are causing bubbles in people's tires and breaking rims left and right. When you have a dysfunctional mass transit system. When you have a police department where you have officers that are trying out for Bellator 332, the next MMA, event, rather than actually doing community policing. We have an out-of-control drug problem. I mean, this is what you decide to focus on. Now, part of the issue, and this is and Baltimore representative of Chicago, of New York, of Miami, of Houston, of Atlanta, of a lot of major black population centers, is that the local Republican parties are so fucked up that people don't have an opportunity for an alternative. Now, I'll present you with a different scenario. All right, we're in Maryland. Governor Hogan right now, last couple polls, even going back to April, has been polling somewhere between 25%, 35% black vote, which is unheard of for a Republican. That's his entire margin when it comes over being over Ben Jealous. 16 points, it's pretty much 35% that he's pulling black votes from Jealous. And so the difference is that in that particular race, and this could be a model going forward for Republicans, is that black folk have an alternative. But could you imagine?
You're saying that he's a real alternative.
A real alternative.
That's not kind of anti-black.
A real alternative. But the thing is this, I told a buddy that works for a prominent member of the CBC, I said, y'all could probably double your numbers overnight. I said, if you guys supported, black candidates in places that, aren't necessarily majority minority districts. I said, it's I think it's ridiculously crazy. And now, give me example. We could use Maryland. We could use, Congress. That in the state of Maryland, where Democrats have controlled things for the last 50 or so years, that we're just now getting the criminal justice reform. We're now, 20. I would say this: if I'm a Democrat, if I'm a black Democrat in 08 and 09, and I just got a black president elected, healthcare is cool. You can fuck up the healthcare system if you want, but hey, we got folk that are hurting in the black community that just turned out at record numbers. They may not be donors, but they gave you the votes that win. Dollars don't vote, people vote. And I think, part of it, one more time, part of the issue is that, Republican Party, and I put the fault on the party. I don't put the fault on the community. I put the fault on the party, has not given the black community an alternative.
But back to strategic non-voting, you do believe that more black voters need to weaponize
Absolutely.
Not voting.
Every other group does.
Yeah.
Conservatives have been, weary of their typical suburban white moms not voting or not turning out. Not turning out is an option. But the thing is this: it only works when there's a threat of your person losing to somebody else. So if I use Baltimore City, if Catherine Pugh has a no-name candidate on the other side of the ballot, even if half of the folk that typically would turn out don't turn out, she's still going to run up numbers and win. So I think non-voting, when coupled with a viable alternative, can be very powerful. But you have to have the threat of that person taking a loss, taking an L, literally hold this L for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think about how a David Axelrod or a Mark Penn or a Hillary Clinton, how these people think is, hey, if you niggas are coming out 90% for the Democrats anyway, and you don't have anywhere to go, why should I invest? Why should I throw out all these goodies? Because you guys are going to vote for us anyway.
Well, this is the thing. I hope Hillary and Democrats learned their lesson in 2016.
No, they haven't. I don't think they have.
20,000 votes in Michigan, 100,000 votes in Florida, and Hillary Clinton's president right now.
Yeah.
But a big part of that, was that, Team Hillary essentially said, fuck black voters. Now I'm going out on a limb and taking Omarosa's word for that. As somebody that was at that table at the time, she was at the table, I wasn't at the table. But, looking at the way they engage black voters, they didn't put the money behind it. Roland says all the time, he told Team Hillary, like, listen, y'all might want to fucking, put your money, where your mouth is when it comes to black votes and black engagement. Donna Brazile said, she had to go beg them for money to actually turn some stuff out.
Yeah.
And so, the thing, I'm pretty sure they haven't learned their lesson. Only because the hate against Trump is so bad. But the thing is this, if Hillary turns out 20,000 more voters in Detroit and Flint, she wins Michigan.
Would you agree with this, that based on the lack of options for the Democrats, getting black voters on board is the cheapest in the country, meaning that we flip elections, we turn elections, we have a lot of power, not financial power, not PAC power, not lobbying power, but at the voting
actual
booth.
Vote.
But they can get our vote the cheapest in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the lowest cost per vote, of any party in any election. You can any election. But I would say this: 2020 come around. If I'm black voters in the Democrat Party, I'm saying fuck Iowa, fuck New Hampshire. The first primary that you're gonna take seriously is South Carolina, and you can go to Nevada after that. But when Super Tuesday come around, we better see you in every goddamn hood.
In our community, we have this thing, hey, what's your top 5, dead or alive? But what's your top 5 in terms of policy specifically for black voters? And would you put attacking lobbyist corporate money in politics in the top 5?
I wouldn't. You wouldn't. I wouldn't. You'll never be able to get rid of lobbyist corporate money.
It's not about getting rid of all of it, but
I mean, the only way you do is systematically over probably a 30, 40-year time span or 20, 30-year time span elect folk that just say, hey, I'm not meeting with lobbyists or I don't care for lobbyists. I mean, I'm a huge Justin Amash fan out of Michigan 6th. Justin's a great guy, young dude, Republican, libertarian Republican. But, he doesn't really take meetings with lobbyists. He has the issues that he cares about and he has his stances, and they are what they are. You take it or leave it. You're only going to come across a Justin every once in a while.
Yeah. I would argue that it needs to be in the top 5 across the country for our people, because a lot of the things that we're working towards, it moves slower because it's competing with corporate voices out of Google. Google has had the claws on the Democratic Party, or Facebook, or the oil industry, or some of the banking industry. We're competing.
Well, yes and no. I will say this. Part of it is that these industries are able to work through party structure. I think the bigger issue when it comes to black voters, black electeds, is dealing with party structure. Ben Jealous right now in Maryland is dealing with a party structure that does not want him as their nominee, so they're not endorsing him. They're not turning out the way they normally would if one of the other guys would have won.
What's that about?
Well, it's for them, they lose power with a Democrat governor. Mike Bush and Mike Miller, the heads of the respective houses of Maryland GA, they now have the control to the power of the governor if he wins, as the new de facto head of their party. But when it comes to money in politics, party structures, up until probably about 18 years ago, could determine who were the nominees, who were the players, who got contracts, who got hired, who got fired, who got elected, who we're going to back, what candidates are dead on arrival. I actually think, and Democrats are waking up to this now. I think, they'll open up the floodgates for Citizens United and super PACs have leveled the playing field dramatically. You can see, I used Florida, for example, you can see Tom Steyer come in and drop, $500,000, $1 million, $5 million on a candidate and say, listen, I want to make you viable overnight. It's what fueled the Tea Party wave in 2010. It's what fueled, the last couple Democratic semi waves. Don't call them waves, but semi waves. What it allows is the mobilization of resources in a way that can combat a party structure. Otherwise, I mean, which only could be matched by a person self-funding if they had the resources to do it.
What are your thoughts on breaking out the box of a two-party system? Should there be more energy to try to break out that box, and we need a third or fourth option?
I will say this. I think you need a third or fourth option. I think a third or fourth option would Congress would get really interesting really, really quickly. But, I think the way things stand right now, I mean, the Libertarian Party is a joke. And I have some folks that are from friends that are LP, and the Green Party is also a bigger joke. It's going to take, them winning something like, I think the LP could, just talking about what we have to work with, I think the LP probably could be a viable third party 10, 15 years down the line, which is a short period of time. But it's going to take them winning some elections and building out a bench and then, getting a W somewhere. But yeah, I think, I'm all for it. I think, I don't think people aptly fall within traditional left-right conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican norms. If you ask me, depending on what issue, the Republican Party, as a whole, doesn't necessarily, represent, every issue where I fall on every issue.
With Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, they weren't looking for any handouts. They were really about, hey, I got to go build my future. I have to go rationalize my future. I'm not waiting for this country, our white America, to change. I'm going to go do the damn thing. Mm-hmm. And so nobody helped Elijah Muhammad in terms of building the empire, the institution out where you saw businesses across the country sprout up. You saw international trade sprout up, but they weren't like, hey, I need some help. They knew the country was racist, but they're like, hey, I'm not waiting for this man to change. I got to go do the damn thing.
And I think that's where, I think that's something that Black America could learn from today. I've always said that, if I actually ran for mayor in 2020 in Baltimore City, moved to the city and run for mayor, the first thing I would, from top of the agenda, be 1,000 new Black businesses in the city. They say average small business, creates probably about somewhere between 10 to 15 jobs. You create 10,000, 15,000 jobs right there in the community overnight. And there are ways to do it. But I think that's something that, I think Black America should revisit, should, turn back to. I think, probably if the moral and, self-cleansing and all that aspect of it, probably folk probably won't touch that today. Yeah. That's a different level of discipline. Yeah. But if you were to walk into the hood or any economically depressed community and say, listen, we're going to come in and put money in everybody's pocket, and this is how we're going to do it. Essentially take that Rock Nation model and apply it, to small businesses. I think you see a whole entire new generation of Black wealth develop.
And how did that message of, hey, we need to clean ourselves up, we need to unify and work together, we need to invest, and we need to do for self, right? We're responsible. We got to build this thing up, right? And so a lot of the famous leaders were preaching do for self, but now they're throwing a lot of people in boxes of, hey, you're blaming the victim. Hey, you can't do anything. We got to wait for the government to change. There's so much racism, you're not going to move the needle. Hey, this is, you can't blame the victim.
I mean, I think it starts with one individual at a time. And I actually think it may be a little easier these days, a lot easier. They did all that without the internet or without, real mass communication. And we have those tools. So I think the opportunity is there for it. Is the willpower there? That's, I think, something to be determined. If I had to run down top 5, starting off with business and economic development. You get folk, money right, you're building families. You get folk money right, you're building futures. Get folk money right, you're building opportunities. You want to make communities safer, alleviate the stress that is driving a lot of that instability and economic depression and social depression. Number 2, I'm probably coming to deal with education. You can't reasonably tell me that, you're going to reelect somebody that is dealing with, $3 billion deficit and school construction and fixes. Sorry, that's sad. That is piss poor. So you probably come in and you fix your school, you're taking care of the next generation overnight. Then dealing with criminal justice reform in a major way. Pretrial detention, only locking up probably the most serious of offenders, repeat offenders, repeat violent offenders. Looking at marijuana, looking at what California just did, where they're pretty much automatically wiping out previous convictions that probably wouldn't be convicted under the current law. We're doing it under the auspices of keeping families together and rebuilding families. Somebody, you can get locked. Yesterday there was a mass bailout around the country. The reality of it is this. You could be charged with the crime, be given a hefty, bail bond amount. You can't meet that, so you're sitting for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe a year or two, while your entire family's destabilized. That's crazy.
You mentioned criminal justice reform, but when Trump was elected, a lot of the private prison stocks went up like 150%. They're like, hey, the Obama administration was coming against us. Now MAGA's back. They've been lobbying Trump. They're close to Trump. The private prison stocks are like, yes,
well,
we get to lock up more people.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's not even that. It's not necessarily locking up more people. It's immigration.
Yeah, that too.
We're all the kids, all the roundup and ICE and ICE going and raiding and grabbing people they're being held in private prisons. While prison reform's happening on one end, immigration is what's keeping these beds still full.
Yeah, it goes to the point that this is another interest lobbying group that buys policy decisions in Washington.
They're the biggest. They're the strongest.
And so, but what you were saying that you wouldn't prioritize kind of going after the lobbying of the promiscuous lobbying of private prison groups. They want to get their stock up. They want to lock up more people. They want to make more profit. And hey, let's figure out how do we stop allowing these lobbyists to drown out our votes.
Part of the issue is this. Because something is outlawed doesn't necessarily mean something's going to be stopped. All of our major drugs have been outlawed for decades. I'm pretty sure everybody in this room, if they wanted to, could probably walk out of this building and within probably a 5-block radius get whatever drug they wanted. It's the reality of it. Lobbying, you can outlaw it tomorrow. It's just going to resurface in a new way. I'm of the belief that in order to combat something with a beast, you have to create another beast of equal or bigger size. How that beast takes form, is to be debated. But, I don't think we will ever be able to deal with, cigarette lobby or a private prison lobby or a gun lobby or, any of these major lobbies that have a stranglehold on a lot of, elected officials. But what you can do is come and provide positive incentive. I'll give it a little bit more plainer terms for the listeners. NFL, right? People are boycotting NFL. I think boycott NFL, is ineffective. I'll tell you why. You can't boycott something that's already huge and ubiquitous. But what you can do is provide positive incentive and positive reward for positive activity. So you say, oh, hey, Kenny Stills and, Eric Reed and we're going to be, still kneeling and whatnot. I may not, be able to do some damage to NFL, but what I can do is support their efforts and what they're doing. And push and provide a positive reward, and I think the same applies to lobbying in this country. You're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to, take down the private prison lobby. But what you can do is say, hey, you know what? Over the next 5 years, we're going to build up the criminal justice reform lobby to be bigger than the private prison lobby, and every single elected official in this country has to now come to us because we can raise the money, we can turn out the voters. And we decide if you win or lose.
Now you're talking about just kind of interest groups. Hey, who has the bigger,
the
biggest
bigger
wallet? Who has the best organization?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I just think that if money is more influential than voting, for example, Barack Obama, one of the Facebook co-founders, helped Barack Obama get elected from a digital marketing perspective. Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, Google, they saw Barack Obama as an ally, and you didn't have much talk of regulation over 8 years, right? These companies are becoming monsters and monopolies. But Barack Obama is considering his friends at Google, his donors that are affiliated with Silicon Valley, when he's thinking about privacy, consumer rights, competition, these people are his friends. These people helped him get elected. So when it's time for him to get in office, there's no regulatory regime even looking at this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, who do you think?
But you say, hey, let us keep on going with this stuff.
I'm for the freest of markets possible. I'm for the freest of markets possible. I think government should be just the right size to protect your rights, nothing more, nothing less, because then it becomes an infringement on your rights in some way, shape, or form. But in that particular case, who do you think was cutting the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 checks for re-election campaigns and joint committees and whatnot? Some folk talk a big game when it comes to money in politics, but everybody needs. The thing, the money is the lifeblood of politics. Everything costs. Advertisements cost, digital marketing costs. Even from let's use the Obama campaign from a digital standpoint. They got credit for creating a new way of engaging voters and engaging donors and whatnot. But, we're being honest about it. They did the math and took the bet. Hey, I could probably raise, $20 for every dollar we spend in political digital advertising and engagement and targeted engagement. If I can come and grab these list of voters that I already know that are supporting me and, build a model that engages voters like them, we can win.
I do think that there's some traction on the Democratic side where Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, they both, because of the pressure coming from the Justice Democrats and kind of the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, they have said we're not going to accept corporate PAC money anymore, which I think is a positive step.
But I will say this: if either one of them run for president, don't be shocked that they have
another
super
way.
PAC.
There's
a super PAC supporting them. Everybody needs their sugar daddy in politics, or sugar mama.
Okay, let's go back to Baltimore. How much agency do we have on black or Democrat-controlled cities such as Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, where you've had the hip-hop mayor in Detroit, you've had other black mayors, Baltimore, hey, Democrats are in power, hey, you guys had your black politicians, but it looks like hell, absolute hell. And so you guys wanted political power, you guys wanted mayors, you guys got all this stuff, but why do the places look like hell? There's of course, as you know, a side there's like, it's white folks. That's why Baltimore's like that. That's why Detroit's like that. It's all white folks. But what do you got to say about, hey, there's black politicians, there's black police chiefs. In a lot of these places, black people have a lot of influence on how that city is run. And even if it was 90% white supremacy, it should not be to the level of hell that some of these areas are in.
I agree 100% with you. Let's take Baltimore, for example, right? When it comes to the city council and the mayor of Baltimore spurring development, she's not worried about developing the depressed black areas. You're not seeing all these incentivized dollars moving into Sandtown and Pigtown and Park Heights. But you saw what happened on Harbor East. You saw what they did in Fed Hill. You saw you see what they're doing in a lot of these places. Where you're seeing new high-rises and you're seeing, the redevelopment and you're seeing the refurbishing of buildings and you're seeing, the move-in of businesses. Local government does play a major role in a lot of things, more so than state government and federal government. It's easy to blame a president or even a governor for something, but, the mayor is where a lot of the power is held. You want a police department that doesn't abuse black citizens, the mayor could demand it overnight. You can demand overnight, and then you demand overnight. You hire a commissioner, and then give the commissioner the directive to say, okay, XYZ policies we're going to put in place. I mean, what we're looking at today in Baltimore is a result of a lot of what Martin O'Malley did. I mean, when Martin O'Malley was mayor, 1 in 5 black men were arrested. I mean, that's a lot of fucking people. I mean, and you could be walking down the street and the jump out boy just grab you for no reason. Throw you holding for 2 days or whatever. Max, they can hold you and then release you, no charge. But the arrest numbers are through the roof. That was police policy. That policy, is directed, by those elected. And I think, a lot of folk, don't necessarily make that connection between, politicians promising me things that I don't see in the other 3 years. But in election year, they're making me these promises. And then, 2 years later, 3 years later, I'm dealing with the Freddie Gray situation.
Is your point of view that let Republicans run Detroit and Baltimore, the shit would be cleaned up?
Nope, not at all. My point of view is let's get good people elected. And I think part of getting good people elected, you have to have some level of competition over your resource. Right now, Democrats are able to take black votes for granted because there's no other side there saying, hey, give me your vote. This is what I'll do. This is what I can do. And there is a playbook to run and win in a deep blue city. I mean, may or may not have it all figured out. But a big part of it is let me know how much you care before you want to know, before I care about how much you know. A lot of times people will come in and say, hey, do this, that, and the third, but I don't care about, what you're talking about because I know you don't really care about me.
More than a few entrepreneurs have started Buy Black apps, mobile apps, where, they're connecting conscious black consumers with black businesses. You have invested in your own app. Where is that today?
It's we got rid of it.
Okay.
It was a good experiment. It was a fun experiment.
And what challenges did you have scaling it?
I mean, part of the issue was, how do we properly monetize on one end, but on the other end, it's going to take a major team to properly identify black businesses across the country. And probably, I mean, maybe it's situation where you have smaller apps, feeding into something major, team in each major city or something like that. But part of our issue is that, we can identify the popular spots. I mean, everybody knows about Park and Horace and Dickey's and, Florida Avenue Grill and, all the popular. But, an app like that benefits, the true black-owned small business that, may not have the big advertising budget. But you can drive traffic to them. And one of the issues that we came across was identifying those small businesses. They aren't easily identifiable, unless if you're not in the ground in a particular place.
Today, Amazon announced that they're raising the minimum wage to $15. And so on the liberal side, Bernie Sanders is like, oh, this is great. Hundreds of thousands of workers got a pay raise with this announcement. What's your reaction to that from a policy perspective in terms of how you view minimum wage increases?
It works for Amazon. That may not be something that works for a lot of companies. Though I think people should be compensated fairly for their work. Absolutely.
So you look at that as like most likely this is a positive thing.
I mean, I think it's a positive thing because it works for Amazon. It works for Amazon. I mean, Amazon is super flush with cash. I don't think if this is 5 years ago, Amazon's making that particular move.
Your Thomas Sowell and kind of other Republicans, they may say, our libertarians, our populists, they may say, hey, Amazon may raise the minimum wage, but the only thing they're going to do is they're going to have less workers. And they're going to invest more in robots, automation, where they've opened Amazon stores where there's no people, right? So while it makes you feel good as a Democrat or a liberal, it feels good like, hey, people are going to get pay increases. Well, the capitalist business is just going to have fewer employees. So some people are not going to be employed because they're going to probably want to hit the same numbers. And they're going to say, you know what? Instead of having 5,000 robots out next year, maybe I'll have 500,000 robots.
I think that may be one of the unintended consequences of new NAFTA, or USMCA, whatever Trump wants to call it. Is that you may see more manufacturing, but you're also going to see more robots building cars than probably people. The economy's changing. Economies change, and people have to keep up with the economy. I think we're, to a degree, moving back to what could be a pre-industrial, and just using this as an analogy, but things are like before the Industrial Revolution, where, folk had a farm and they sold their crops or whatnot, and a return to, individualism and entrepreneurship. Rather than going and working for the big, corporation that, kind of make, you come clock your hours, do your job, and roll out. I think that's where we're moving to with the, advent of the internet, with the development of the internet, with, the internet being such a tool that, hey, I can now distribute any service or product to millions of people at almost zero cost. That's amazing. That is ridiculously amazing. And so I think, when it comes to the minimum wage in particular, I'm not necessarily somebody that argues for a minimum wage. I believe in let's keep raising the maximum wage. Let's keep raising, the most, somebody can make. But I think people should, if you have the stomach for it, go out and start your own thing. Get you some equity. Even Beyonce say, pay me, pay off the debt in equity, and really, build something out that you can pass on to your family, the next generation, and change what the starting spot is. You might have started at zero, and your kids got to start at zero.
What's your point of view to the black political observer who says, look, William Jefferson in Louisiana was caught with $98,000 in his freezer.
Crazy.
Kwame, the hip hop mayor in Detroit, he's in prison for corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Nagin, the Katrina hero,
Yep.
He's in jail, I believe, still involved with corruption. What's your view to that political observer who says, look, all the white politicians are doing the same thing. These black people just got caught. Do you think that's the right kind of, point of view that we should take when our political leaders are fortunate enough to get into office, but they're riding dirty? They're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, and, they're corrupt.
I have zero tolerance for political corruption. White, black, Democrat, Republican. I think Jack Johnson's, the county executive, PG County. He was. I don't understand what it is with people getting caught with massive amounts of cash. You're living on $150,000 a year salary. How the fuck do you walking around with $90K in cash? Just being honest about it. It's crazy, right? But for the same token, you have a Duncan Hunter. Him and his wife, pretty much using their campaign, federal campaign account as a slush fund. And so I have zero tolerance when it comes to political corruption.
So you're not buying into that.
No,
because
the thing is this. First of all, you're getting a great salary. And if you can't necessarily live on that salary, then one, you probably need to increase your income legitimately somewhere else, or two, if you can't balance that checkbook, how the hell can I expect you to balance this, $1 billion checkbook or this multi-million-dollar checkbook and budget, right? I think that goes to the deeper part of it, but it's not a black or white issue. I hate when folk were making that argument. Making an argument with Bill Cosby. They're like, oh my gosh, Harvey Weinstein and Donald Trump, they all did the same thing, but they got the black guy. I said, Cosby's a serial rapist. He should be in jail. Maybe somebody serve him a pudding pop, while he's in, mid-max. And
they'll believe him.
And they'll believe him.
If he says a prisoner
gave me the pudding pop last night, he did, he deserve it. He's a nasty nigga. He earned his nasty award.
I don't think being soft on black political corruption is going to be helpful for our community at all. And if the white folks are out molesting kids, doing corrupt stuff, shooting people,
elect prosecutors that are prosecuted.
That doesn't mean that we want to promote and make excuses for when we do these things in our community. Like, you need to clean the mess up, specifically in our own house. Mm-hmm. Who cares if white folks are doing all these evil things? You want to be able to be evil too. That's not the way to rise out of oppression.
Not at all. Not at all. Lock them all up. Those are people that actually deserve to be in jail. You give somebody power and they abuse it, make them feel the wrath of the power that they have.
I want to thank Eugene Craig for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. No, we love to Go team, man.
Thanks everybody for listening to Go. You can check me out at Jamarlin Martin on Twitter, and also come check us out at Moguldom.com. That's Moguldom.com. Be sure to subscribe to our daily newsletter. You can get the latest information on crypto, tech, economic empowerment, and politics. Let's go.